so I'm going to go ahead and get started. So Mr. Harz mentioned my name's Stephen Apple. I'm from around the area. I cover tillage for Wisconsin, Illinois, and part of Missouri. So I was able to start this job right around the VT and the release of the 2680H. So brand new tillage tools for our product line. All right, and there were gaps that we knew we had. So when we look at this 2660VT, we have a lot of features that some of our competitors don't have. Does anybody know what the gang angle on this tool is? We'd say 0 to 12 degrees. Go ahead. Yep, it goes all the way to 12. Yep. So right now I think we're at around 8. It goes up to 12. All right, so vertical tillage normally is around a 0 to 2 degree, a really light vertical tillage. Our VT is a variable intensity tool. So 0 to 12 degrees, right? Your 0 to 5 is more vertical till. In the fall, sometimes you want to manage more residue, right? And that's when we do the 5 to 10 degrees. And then that 11 to 12 is for, weed management, if you want to fill in ruts, right? That extended VT application or variable intensity is not normally what we see all the time in corn residue management, but for those areas that we want to be more aggressive. All right, so this blade here, it's the Commander blade. It's 22-inch blade, similar to some of the competition, but ours is the thickest blade for the market as far as that style blade. We're about a 0.5 millimeter thicker. All right, we go, like I said, 0 to 12, and we can do it 2 ways. So you can't really see it, but behind here there's a hydraulic cylinder. All right, if you have the hydraulic cylinder, you have what we call true set gang angle adjust. All right, with true set, you're going to have a lot of features that are all kind of a la carte ordered. So if you get the basic true set, you're going to get depth control and you're going to get basket pressure. All right, the other option on all our 3-section tools is wing pressure. All right, so that can be manual or true set. All right, and then the one, as I just mentioned, was the gang angle. So if you get the gang angle, you have a cylinder on every gang, and in the cab with true set, you can adjust the tool as you're going through the field. All right, so that could be with the prescription, that could be just, hey, I'm not doing what I want. You can adjust it to a heavier or a lighter angle, right? You want more speed, you can, make it less aggressive, and that can all be from the cab with true set. All right, I mentioned true set, right? We have all these features, but this tool can be completely base as well. So if you get a base tool, you'll have a single point depth control. Your pressures on the front will be either a turn valve, right? So you can set your pressures for the basket, the hydraulic down pressure. The gangs will have a spring pin right here, right? And you can roll these. So this roller design makes it really easy to move those gangs. So some of the competition have more of a sandwich style where you have to move between 2 pieces of steel. And what happens over time, you get mud and rust, and it's really hard to move them. You just don't move them very often, right? So even with the mechanical design, we're still able to move these gangs very easily. All right, in the front here we have a stabilizer wheel. So this is a mechanical stabilizer wheel. We have a turn valve there, which is a little loose, but if it's true set, we'll have a cylinder right there. All right, so with true set stabilizer wheels, once you set your depth, you set that stabilizer wheel, and if you would change your depth while you're going through the field, the stabilizers will move with your depth. All right, if you don't change depth very often, I'd probably say just go with the mechanical style, because you can set those once and you never really have to adjust that. All right, so that's another true set option. As far as widths, I didn't mention that yet. So this is a 30-foot tool. This is probably the most common size we sell. We have one smaller, so we have a 25-foot, and then we have a 33-foot. Those are all the 3-section tools. And then if we go to the large 5 sections, we have a 43 and a 49-foot. All right, the 49-foot, you're looking at probably 9620. So a lot of horse with VT, right? And that's not because of necessarily the aggression. It's the speed we want to run the tool, right? We want these tools to run around 8 to 10 miles an hour. All right, if you're going slower than that, sometimes you're not going to like the finish you're having. So I'd say 6.5 to 7.5 would probably be all right, but if you get below that, the VT market, you really need that speed to move that soil and manage the residue and cut inside it, right? So as far as the other features, so the blades, they're kind of the name of the gang, change your angle, managing the residue. But when you go behind the tool and you start looking at the finish, the biggest part of that is actually that Pro Finish system. All right, so that's a double basket system, and that's one of the only, it's our only tool on the market that has a double basket, right? And you have to have the double basket. That's your only finishing option on the VT, right? And you're always going to have the reverse knife edge on the front. So if you look at that there, and then you look at the 2730, that looks like it's backwards, right? And it's meant to be that way. So it's hard to see it in this orientation, but when you put this basket in the ground, your front basket isn't running at the same depth as your rear basket, right? The front basket's actually your subsoil management. So when we do any angle with the blade, we're gonna make a little bit of a ripple in the field, right? We want to turn the pressure on the basket so the front basket can pin the residue and then knock those ridges out. All right, and then the rear basket, we have a round bar on it there, will then make that nice finish on top, so the top soil management, right? The rear basket you can get in a round or a flat bar design. So a lot of people ask which is best in their area. The round bar will have a little bit more structure strength as far as going through rocks and harder conditions. The flat bar, some people like for more chaos, more clod management. Any rocks at all, I always recommend the round bar. So if you look at the rear baskets there, there's a stop on the rear one, right? So there's 3 ways you can run your baskets. We recommend always having them down with pressure, all right? The other option is pulling them both up, right, and not using the baskets at all. And then the third one would be putting the front one down with pressure and putting the cylinder lock in the rear one to leave that up if that one's wanting to plug. I've ran the VTs in some very muddy situations. In the front basket, you're never going to see plug. The way it's running down in there, it just doesn't want to get soil in the center of it. A rear basket or the finishing basket on almost any tool, if it's very muddy, you can get some plugging scenarios. So. All right, the last thing as far as options, we do have the tire options, right? So these are radials. I always recommend radials. If a price-sensitive conversation is happening, you can put the bias on the outsides. We do have a flotation package, all right? So if we have customers here that want to run tillage in the spring in some wet conditions, your limiting factor is the flotation tires, right? If you start sinking your tires, right, you're not going to be able to cover the tire tracks and your finish is not going to be what you want. So if you're going to want to get out in the spring, early, wet conditions, I always recommend putting on the flotation tire package, all right? So as far as options here, the last one would be, is anybody familiar with AccuDepth in this group? That's the old TrueSet system. So with AccuDepth, it used to be if you had an issue, it would still run, but you had to use stops. It's kind of a messy, harder way to run the tillage. With TrueSet on every tool we have now, the new system, the new software, every system has a redundancy, right? So if, say this tractor breaks down, you got an old 20 series or a red tractor you got to run on it, we can do everything on the tool manually. Right, so this tool here is going to be all automated, ran through the display. I could take a red tractor, I could throw it on it, I could use single point, there's a red knob on your gangs you can turn out and adjust them manually, hydraulically, and then the pressures, all that, the hex valves, everything can be done manually. All right, so there's always redundancy. There's never a time where you can, you're deading out, that your tractor's broke down, you need to get something else. The tool can work with absolutely no technology, even if it's ordered with the technology.